Well, it's been a hot minute since we talked about one of those public domain horror movie cartoon characters become serial killer type movies. So screw it, why not? Let's do another kind of movie marathon video where we talk about all the ones that I haven't talked about yet. The main reason I'm doing it like this is because I don't want to dedicate review after review after review to these movies. I think it's just easier to talk about them all in one video, especially since after watching a lot of these, some of these don't have that much to talk about. But if you're not familiar, in the past I've looked at the Winnie the Pooh horror movies, I've looked at the Mickey Mouse horror movies. The last one was the big movie marathon video where we talked about like 4 different movies all in one, and I was joined by Elvish Reviews for that video. But for this one, we're talking about even more than that, and like I said in the intro, we're gonna be breezing through a lot of these because some of these just have not that much to say about them. We're gonna talk about the big boys of this subgenre. We're gonna talk about good old Jagged Edge Productions, but a lot of these are also from their distributor ITN, which I described as the British Asylum last time we did one of these. They just keep cranking these movies out as cheaply and as quickly as they can just to cash in on being the first of, hey, we put out this horror movie that's based on this character that just went into the public domain. Oh, we're the first ones to do it. Even if they don't have Jagged Edge Productions doing it, ITN usually want to be the first to cash in on it. And I never really talked about a lot of these before, but before they jumped in this whole public domain horror movie trend, they were mostly known for doing horror movies based on folklore and fairy tales. They did like Nutcracker and The Killing Tree and Humpty Dumpty and a couple of other movies like that. There was like some leprechaun horror movies they made. They probably did like a Tooth Fairy or Easter Bunny movie at some point, wouldn't surprise me. But after all the stuff of Winnie the Pooh going into the public domain and Jagged Edge Productions wanting to work with them, it seems like they found their new niche. So since I haven't reviewed any of these right off the bat, I'm going to talk about the 3 other Jagged Edge movies before we get to some of these other ones. Obviously, those 3 are Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, Bambi the Reckoning, and their most recent one that came out earlier this year, which was the Pinocchio Unstrung movie. Now, the thing with all of these movies, with the key exception maybe being Pinocchio, all of these movies feel like you could easily swap out the horror killer with just generic, no-name serial killer, and it really wouldn't matter. I mean, maybe Pinocchio and Peter Pan is the exception, but Bambi the Reckoning, I'm just gonna get that one out of the way first. Bambi is basically just a typical nature attacks or animal revenge movie. I mean, it has the Bambi setup at the beginning where Bambi is frolicking in the woods and then his mom gets killed by a hunter. And then as he gets older, his wife is then hit by some car that's being driven by employees of this medical facility. They work in chemicals and they're dumping chemicals in the water out in the forest.
Or maybe they become angry. Bitter, twisted, hell-bent on revenge. Because what happens if the forest fights back?
And then he ends up drinking from the polluted water, which then mutates him into this evil mutant deer. And from there, you just have a family that are out at this log cabin vacation home in the countryside, and a couple of hunters, and people who work for this facility who end up getting caught in the crossfire.
Who told them to do it?
I did, but nothing like this has ever happened before.
You've done this before.
Wilbexter have been dumping chemicals for years, but these were evidently different.
God,
we didn't
need
know
to
that
call
they...
the police,
No!
Simon.
At one point, they try to kidnap Bambi's fawn, and there's a little boy character, and he ends up getting mixed up with all of this. And there's this moment where you think Bambi's gonna kill the kid, but because the kid tries to save the fawn, he mostly leaves the kid alone. And from there, it's just basically nature attacks movie. You could have made this movie and have it be like a grizzly bear is trying to attack them, but it's a giant mutant deer that's supposed to be Bambi, and still, the last time I mentioned this movie, I maintain the funniest part is still easily seeing a deer flip over a CG truck. That's kind of funny. But other than that, it's just a generic people trying to survive in the wilderness against a giant, massive, murderous animal movie. Other than, oh yeah, Bambi is trying to seek revenge. Other than that, it really isn't that much of a Bambi movie. I mean, you could have called this literally anything else and taken any kind of mention of the Bambi story out of it, and it wouldn't have mattered. For shit's sake, you could have called this a fucking Nokotan horror movie and it would have made just as much sense. However, despite Bambi being just kind of mediocre at best in my opinion, I will say I actually did like the Pinocchio one, and I actually didn't mind the Peter Pan one. The Peter Pan one, there's some elements of Peter Pan in there, but it does kind of have that same problem of this could have just been anything else. I was a little worried when I saw the trailer for it, and the movie just kind of acted on those fears where it looks like a million other movies. I mean, there's a part where he's running around dressed up as a clown, and he's trying to speak to this kid like while locked under the staircase like Evil Dead, and he's trying to coerce the kid to come down to the basement with him, so it's kind of like Pennywise talking to Georgie in the sewer drain.
Today, I got you a balloon. Don't you remember me? From the circus. Mm-hmm.
That was you?
Mm-hmm. Indeed it was. Hey, I guess that means we're friends.
And a little bit later, they show his actual face, and it's a little bit burned, and it's like, oh, so he's kind of Freddy Krueger, because he's trying to entice these children like Freddy Krueger would, kind of. But despite all that, the movie actually wasn't as bad as I was expecting it to be. It's not very good, but it's a lot better than I initially thought based on its trailer. At the end of the day, it's basically just this evil, creepy guy is kidnapping children and killing them. So he kidnaps the youngest of this family that have 3 kids. He takes the youngest kid, Michael, and his friend Joy, and it's up to Wendy, who's the kid's older sister, to try and save them. And then as the movie progresses, they kind of go a little bit into the Peter Pan lore. There is a scene where he's floating off the ground. So maybe he does have mystical powers, kind of. That's like the closest you really get with any of the Peter Pan lore. Other than that, they could have just had this be any generic child abduction, child predator movie, and it really wouldn't have mattered. I do like this, though, because there's this weird, subtle implication going on where, so he has this blonde woman who's working with him named Tinker, who's supposed to be his version of Tinkerbell.
Why hasn't he taken you there, then?
Because I'm different, and I've always been different. I'm a fairy.
And earlier in the movie, they say that one of his earliest captures was a little blonde boy named Timmy, who was very effeminate and often liked to dress up in dresses.
He always told us he felt like a little girl inside, and his mother believed him. My Timmy was always such a kind child.
So we're to believe that Tinker is actually Timmy all grown up, who's, I guess, transitioned into this Tinker identity. I don't really know. They don't really go that much into it, other than occasionally Tinker questions Peter Pan, and Peter Pan, like, beats her down to the ground and is like, don't ever question me again!
I don't believe in Neverland.
Oh, well, that's fine. Because I never believed in fairies anyway.
And that's about it. They do the fake out happy ending where they get Michael and Joy out of there. We see the next year, it seems like everything's perfectly fine. But then Wendy gets a call from Peter Pan, and you hear the ominous music, and he's still out there. Most recent outing, Pinocchio Unstrung, easily the best one they've done. Like, even compared to the Blood and Honey movies, which I'm just not that big on. I didn't really like the first one. I thought it was just very cash grab and cynical and very just cheap. And then the second one, it's like, okay, the production value is upped a little bit, but it's still not very good. It feels like they were just trying to rewrite history and be like, oh, well, the first one, that was a movie in this movie's universe. This one, out of all of them, actually feels like they took the Pinocchio concept, because if you go back to the original Pinocchio story, there's a lot of really fucked up shit in it. They actually do a good job building off of that. There is a scene where he kills the cricket with a hammer like in the original story. So it's like, you know what? I completely appreciate that they're actually trying to do something with the original source material, whereas the other ones, it feels like this could have just been any other generic horror movie. But here, they take the ideas of Pinocchio wanting to be a human boy, wanting to befriend other human children, and constantly being manipulated into doing bad things by those around him. Except this time, those manipulating him are the cricket and this rotting puppet woman that's connected to the wall in the basement that he came from, who's supposed to be his mother. The movie also does a good job connecting loose ends that they set up very early on. Like, in this movie, the main kid is a kid named James, who's now living with his grandfather, and the grandfather has some kind of reputation around town, but we don't really know exactly what it is right off the bat. And then you go deeper into it, and he's like basically trying to play God, because there's this cursed tree that's in the basement that has this special kind of wood that brings whatever it's made into to life. And apparently he's been trying to create puppets that are sentient for a very long time, and they're just wicked right off the bat, and he usually ends up killing them with a shotgun. But this one that he created recently, Pinocchio, which they say is supposed to be connected to a friend that James lost a couple of years ago, that's why he seems to have a fondness for James and wants to be his friend right away. That I actually like that connection. I thought that was a really brilliant way of connecting it all together. It turns out that he's actually the first puppet that he created that wasn't wicked right off the bat. So I liked that element of, is this Pinocchio actually pure of heart, or maybe this one, maybe he isn't? Because they do stuff with his nose growing, and he does use his nose as a weapon several times. So I gotta give the movie credit. They did take the Pinocchio concept and run with it. The more I think about it, this is a better Pinocchio horror movie than the one from the 90s, Pinocchio's Revenge. That was just a generic court drama with some kind of Child's Play ripoff elements in the last 10 minutes. This one actually took the Pinocchio idea and did something with it. So not just for these Jagged Edge Productions movies, but as far as these go, this is definitely one of the better ones. I feel like they actually did a good job trying to make a genuine Pinocchio horror movie that actually took a lot of the really sick, twisted elements of the original story and did stuff with it. It is kind of a shame that Robert Englund, his character as the Jiminy Cricket stand-in for the movie, he shows up halfway through the movie, but he actually wasn't that bad. He did a pretty good job as this evil, twisted Jiminy Cricket. Oh, and another thing before I forget, the practical effects. Because there's some animatronic stuff in here. There's some CG here and there, but hey, you know what? At least it wasn't AI. I'll take that. This movie's got Eli Roth's Ice Cream Man beat when it comes to that. But yeah, the practical effects, there's some animatronic work in here. Like, there's actual like puppetry going on. It actually doesn't look that bad. So you know what? Jagged Edge Productions, you're stepping up your game. I like what you're doing. So that does it for the Jagged Edge Production ones, but there's so many of these that I was able to find. When I was looking through Tubi to see if I can watch any of these movies, there are so many of them. So I jotted a couple of them down. Some of them I didn't finish. I will breeze past them a little bit later, but since this is the one Popeye horror movie that I didn't watch the last time I did a Popeye movie review, I finally decided to watch it, and I sincerely regret it. It's called Shiver Me Timbers. Plot to this one is Halley's Comet is going by, and it's set in the 80s. And this is one of those horror movies where every other thing in the movie, whether it's an item or something written in the background, is some kind of horror nod. There are so many, hey, look, we're being clever. Look, that's a reference to this famous horror director. Or, oh, that's a reference to a prop or an item that was in this other horror movie that's really beloved. I got so sick of that so fast. But the basic premise, there are people who are coming out to these campgrounds to see Halley's Comet because it comes by just every once in a while. You know, it's a very rare thing to happen. So these people go out there, they come across this old man who right off the bat you know is going to be Popeye because he says, I am what I am, and he's smoking a pipe.
Now blow me down. Are you a sailor? I am what I am, and that's all I am.
They also have this opening narration where they explain that comets back then had some kind of like religious context where people feared that comets would bring disasters or mutations.
In Switzerland, Halley's Comet was blamed for earthquakes, illnesses, red rain, and even the birth of two-headed animals.
Of course, when Halley's Comet goes by, this guy ends up mutating into Popeye, where he has these giant growth arms and he's super strong, and like his face like distorts into Popeye.
Well, blow me down.
I mean, it's different. It's not like the other ones where it's like, oh, poisoned spinach or whatever, that turned him into that, or he was just born that way. You know, Halley's Comet, I wasn't expecting that. But other than that, man, this is one of those stupid horror movies, much like The Mousetrap when we talked about all the Mickey Mouse horror movies. This is one where it's written with this, hey, you know, we're really big fans of Sam Raimi and Evil Dead, so let's just make this super self-aware horror movie where every other line of dialogue is pointing out horror cliches, because if we point out the cliches, that makes us really funny and really clever. Except no, it doesn't. It gets really annoying and really obnoxious after a while, and fucking A, they do it so often in this movie. And I just kept like putting my head in my hands, just like, oh my god, are they still doing this? You think that like maybe they'd get all that out of the way in like the first 20 minutes. It goes for the whole movie. The plus side, if you're looking for a dumb horror movie with lots of gore, it has that. But other than that, man, I can't really think of a real reason to watch this movie. I mean, it even ends with knockoff Evil Dead type stuff because the main girl ends up killing Popeye, but then later on, like I think it's like a little while later, she gets a phone call that says that Popeye is somewhere in New York now, and then she has this like electronic glove that she got from a character earlier in the movie that could help her take on Popeye's super strength. She like puts the glove on, looks at the camera, and says something that Ash Williams would say.
Groovy.
Sad. Last time I hinted that this was probably going to be the last Popeye horror movie I'd ever have to talk about, but when I was perusing through Tubi, I found that there's one straight up called Popeye 4: The Resurrection. So are all these Popeye movies connected? Like, is Shiver Me Timbers supposed to be 3, and then Popeye the Slayer Man and Popeye's Revenge are like the first 2? I guess this is part of its own cinematic universe. On top of that, Shiver Me Timbers is supposed to be getting a sequel. I don't know how, but maybe it'll take place in New York. It'll be Shiver Me Timbers Lost in New York, I guess. And this could possibly be a lie. It came from a Facebook page, so take it with a grain of salt. But allegedly, I think there's supposed to be some kind of connection to Betty Boop, because she also went into the public domain, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Betty Boop horror movies. I watched one of them, the one that I know is out at the moment. But apparently she's going to be in the Shiver Me Timbers sequel, which, you know what, as stupid as it might be, it's like, all right, I'll take it. I mean, evil Popeye teams up with evil Betty Boop, or maybe they fight to the death or something. I don't know. Maybe you could do something fun with that, maybe. Now, before we get to the one Betty Boop movie I watched, I will briefly take a detour to talk about the one Mickey Mouse horror movie I didn't talk about last time, because last time there were 2 that I wasn't able to find. One was Mickey's Sleigh House, which I don't even think exists. I went looking, all I could find was the trailer. It said that it came out in 2025 or something, but I can't find this movie. I can't find any kind of release or streaming release or physical media release. I can't find anything on this movie. But the other one I was able to find. It's this Mexican-American co-production called Heart Willie. Now for positives, just like with Shiver Me Timbers, if you're looking for a dumb, gory horror film, this movie's got it. This movie is gory, and it is very explicit with the gore, so probably going to have to limit any and all clips that we can use here. But the premise to this one is it takes place somewhere in Mexico, and there's this small team of like YouTubers that are supposed to be paranormal or murder investigators, I guess. Seems to be a trend we're getting a lot recently. With the boom of channels like that, there's a lot of these small, like Shelby Oaks did that, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 did that, this movie did it. So yeah, they're getting together in Mexico, and you know, right away you establish everyone's like an archetype. You got the leader guy who kind of looks like Chris Angel. You got this other guy who is a little bit more of like the jokester, I guess. Then you got the super slutty girl who is like talking about how she just wants to fuck everyone in the group. And then you got main girl, and she seems a little bit timid, a little bit mousy, like she doesn't want to be there. They're supposed to be investigating some kind of abandoned building. I just shrugged my shoulders and said, fuck it, it's a crack den. Because I don't know, like, what, it doesn't look like a house. It doesn't look like an abandoned restaurant. It doesn't look like a factory. I don't know where that place was.
Yeah, man, yeah. I'm at the location. What you mean? I've been here for a while. Wrong location. Man, let me check.
They're supposed to be investigating this legend called the Mouse Boy, which is what allegedly Walt Disney based Mickey Mouse off of. It's this guy who I guess was experimented on. I guess, even though it seems like he's just running around with a Mickey Mouse mask, because he takes his mask off several times and he just...
Hello, Willie.
I don't even know why he's called the Mouse Boy, other than he ran around with this mask a lot, I guess. I don't know. Where'd the mask even come from if he is the one that allegedly inspired Mickey Mouse in the first place? But very early on, they have main girl say this.
If I were to fall in love with someone and then find out that they were a killer, I think I would stay with them.
And right away I was thinking, okay, that's coming back in some way. And sure enough, it does, because she ends up siding with Willie and is helping him with his kills. And she helps him kill and torture the other members of the group.
Ever since I first looked into your beautiful eyes, I've been able to feel you.
Perfect way to break this movie down. First act feels like a YouTube video. The second act feels like Saw. And then the third act turns into Obsession for some reason. Because she's like making these like weird Nikki from Obsession romantic obsessed passes at Willie until eventually they just join forces and start killing people. I don't know. I'm tempted to say this is the best of them, but then I remembered Screamboat existed, and it's like, no, Screamboat had a little more fun with the Mickey Mouse and Disney pastiches. I mean, those got annoying quick, but at least it was something. You could tell they were kind of having fun with the material. This one, it's better than Mousetrap, and it's better than Mouse of Horrors, so just by proxy, it's the second best next to Screamboat, but it's a bit of a gap between that movie and this one.
Steamboat Willie is the first character ever played by Mickey Mouse in 1928.
As I was going through Tubi and I was trying to find these movies, I found another one from ITN. This one's a Minnie Mouse horror movie instead, and this will parlay into 3 other movies that basically have the exact same problem. The Minnie Mouse horror movie is called Minnie's Midnight Massacre. And then the other 2 movies that are very, very similar are, there's an Aladdin horror movie, which apparently has a sequel. I didn't watch it because it just looked like it was more of the same. And the Betty Boop horror movie that is out currently, which is called Betty's Revenge. I don't know why these movies have revenge in the title, other than it's an easy horror cliche. And yet for some reason the Bambi movie, which was about revenge, was called Bambi the Reckoning instead of Bambi the Revenge. I don't fucking know. Now with all these movies, they try to have differences to them. I mean, the Minnie Mouse one is about a little girl who was tortured by these bullies, and then the bullies go back to this old house for a weekend, and then they end up getting killed one by the girl who is either still alive or is insane and running around with a Minnie Mouse costume, which means she's running around with like a black bodysuit, a little polka dot dress, gloves, a mouse mask, and she has a wig on for some reason instead of having like a bow. Then you get to the other ones, like the Aladdin movie is basically the same. Group of people, it's usually like 4 or 5 people, stay at a lake house or an Airbnb, and then in that one they come across this lamp which can grant wishes, but it's like a monkey's paw thing, so if they make a wish, it ends up killing them in the end. And the monster in it, like, it doesn't look anything like the genie from Aladdin. It doesn't look like Aladdin. It doesn't look like Jafar. It's like, I don't know. It looks like that Darth Maul looking thing from Insidious. The monster that was in that. It looks like that. Other than that, there is fuck all to say about the Aladdin one and the Minnie Mouse one and the Betty Boop one. The difference with that is that a group of people are staying at this house that is apparently connected to this old place called Dizzy Dishes that I guess Betty Boop used to work at. I guess that was a thing in the cartoons. I didn't watch that much Betty Boop. like growing up. I didn't watch that many reruns of it. I grew up watching reruns of Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry. Wait, yeah, Dizzy Dishes, Betty Boop, back in the day, she was in a relationship with someone while this guy wanted to be with her. So because she didn't get with him, he killed her by setting the building on fire, and now I guess she haunts the building. And the Betty Boop that's in this movie, it's just some actress who looks like, if you looked up like Betty Boop cosplay tutorials on YouTube, that's what it looks like she was doing. It's like she has like a little black wig that goes down to like her shoulders. She has some earrings. They put like a little makeup on her. I guess they powdered her face to be a little pale like Betty Boop. I guess that's a thing. Suffers the same problem as all these other ITN movies where it's like, it feels like they filmed it in a weekend at somebody's vacation house or whatever, and they're just like, oh yeah, we'll just throw it all together later. It's just so sloppy and just so lazy. And unfortunately, just like with Popeye and Mickey Mouse and all these other shits, they're gonna make a million of these. There's so many other lazy, borderline AI looking fucking Betty Boop horror movies. And they all have dumb titles. There's one called Boop where, that's the only one that, there's no trailer for it or anything, but the image for it makes it look like Betty Boop is some kind of like Eldritch abomination. I don't know, maybe that one could be kind of fun, just based on that one image. But everything else, there's one called Don't Make Betty Boop, which I can't help but laugh at. It's like, yeah, don't make more Betty Boop horror movies. They suck. If we're going off of this one movie. God, there were some other ones. Like Betty Boop Da Doop Da Die, I think is one. Oh, I didn't even watch this one. I just watched the trailer for it. There's apparently a Simon Says movie. I didn't even realize that you could make a Simon Says movie, let alone one that was a horror. All I have written down in the notes is Simon Says, if this is even real or if this even counts. But the last three I want to talk about, there are Wizard of Oz horror movies. And the only reason I'm aware of this is because I saw the trailer for one of them in front of a movie I saw earlier this year. I was super surprised by that. I didn't realize they would show a trailer for that. But yeah, it's one of the more recent ones. The three that I was able to see are Gale the Yellow Brick Road, which that's the one I saw the trailer for. The other two I just recently heard about. When I looked up Wizard of Oz horror movie, I found there were more of them. I'm like, oh fuck, okay. There's one called The Wizard of Death, Tin Man Rises, or The Rise of the Tin Man. It's something like that. And then the last one, and it's easily the worst one that I saw of these three, was Wizard of Oz Dead Walk. Get these movies out of the way because there's really not a whole lot to go into in full-on separate reviews for these. Gale the Yellow Brick Road is probably the best one. It's about a girl who isn't directly Dorothy, but her last name is Gale, and she thinks she might be connected to Dorothy Gale. And what I appreciate about this one is that it seems like they're taking inspiration from Return to Oz, which, in my opinion, is probably the best Wizard of Oz movie since the original Wizard of Oz. All the animated ones and like the prequel things like Oz the Great and Powerful, those just don't do it for me. But the fact that they were trying to make a horror movie, it's more of like a psychological horror or psychological thriller where, is this happening? Is it not happening? I kind of like that aspect of it. It's PG-13, so it's not very violent, but I don't know. There's not a whole lot to talk about. It's like, I kind of liked what they did with this one. The fact that they connected it to Return to Oz, which is a movie I really love, I can appreciate that. But as for the other two, skip them. They're super bland. I mean, Wizard of Death, Tin Man Rises, or whatever the fuck it's called. That one, it's pretty much just Blood and Honey, but swap out Winnie the Pooh with the Tin Man. And I would complain about the Tin Man costume that's in this movie, but considering the one that I watched after it, this one actually ain't looking all that bad. I want to give them some props because it's like, okay, you're making a horror movie based on Wizard of Oz, and you have it that the Tin Man is going around killing people trying to take their hearts because that's all he wants. If I only had a heart. Super dumb, but you know what? Maybe you could make something fun with it. And I can see people watching it in the same way they'd watch something like Blood and Honey and be like, oh, that was a dumb, fun horror movie, but I don't know. I feel like I've just seen so many of these kind of movies where this kind of shit just isn't fun to me anymore. It's just like, all right, it's another one of these. They clearly didn't try. They didn't put that much effort into it other than maybe the costume. Other than that, it's just a bunch of people standing around in like hallways or staying at this Airbnb or lake house that somebody in the cast maybe owns. And then every once in a while you got people wandering in the woods and then they get attacked by this guy in a Tin Man costume. Nothing more, nothing less. Wizard of Oz Dead Walk. This one, sucks so hard, man. This one is about Dorothy, who is a recovering heroin addict, going to stay at this rehab facility that looks like someone's grandma's house. But she's staying there, and so there's this constant, like, did she really go to Oz, or is she just crazy and imagining all this stuff in her, like, drug-induced hallucinations? So there's this constant flip-flop, all the while she keeps getting these visions that may or may not be going on of a guy in a scarecrow costume and a guy in a Tin Man costume coming to try and kill her and everyone around her because they're mad at her for abandoning them, because when she left Oz, the Wicked Witch came back and took over everything. And it's important to note that there's only Tin Man and only Scarecrow. There is a guy who's supposed to be sort of a surrogate for the Cowardly Lion. He's just this like big buff dude who's kind of annoying. But they couldn't even be bothered to get a fake-ass lion costume for this guy. It's not like it would really matter because the costumes are bad. I mean, the Scarecrow costume, it's fine, I guess. It's like Scarecrow costumes aren't that hard to put together. But the Tin Man costume, it's like they got a plastic knight helmet and then like some chest plating and then like some of those like pads that you put on for like people who are into rollerblading or bike riding. And then they just spray painted all of it silver. It looks like crap. Weirdly enough, it's like they try to sexualize Dorothy throughout the whole movie. It's not that the actress isn't attractive, but it's like, you know, they have her running around with like super tight shirts and running around with like, but she'll be wearing like a button down shirt and like not just the top 2 buttons, but like 4 buttons are undone. If anything, this is probably the goriest of the Wizard of Oz horror movies. So if you're just watching it just for the gore, yeah, watch this one. But you know what? Again, like going back to what I said earlier, I can't even give this movie that much credit because it's like, you know what? Just because your horror movie is really gory, that does not mean the movie itself is that good. It's not creative at all, other than, oh, Dorothy's a heroin addict and maybe she's imagining all of this. We don't know. Anyways, guys, that does it for Blockbusters in August. I seriously need a break because between getting over a sickness and having to watch all these movies and watching a lot of these movies back to back makes me feel like my brain is now missing. I don't know. We're only going to be doing 2 movie reviews next month. I'm not sure what those are going to be, but whatever they are, look forward to that next time. Until then, guys, I am Adam Sykes of the Blockbuster Show, and we will see you guys in the next video.
It doesn't make sense! Minnie!